Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Marc Guberti, the content marketing expert, bringing you 5 new episodes every week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. Hello, Breakthrough Success listeners. I just wanted you all to know before the episode actually starts, I've been working a little bit behind the scenes to give you something really special. So a while ago, I wrote my book, Content Marketing Secrets, which helps people create, promote, and optimize their content for growth and revenue. And I just put the finishing touches together to offer that for free to anyone who is interested. So if you want your free copy of Content Marketing Secrets, all you have to do is head over to marcguberti.com/book. Now, let's jump right into the episode. Regardless of where you are in business, we all want more people following our content. We all want more people to be in our audience, to become our customers. So the way to do that is to up your influence, getting people to know about you, getting to grow your authority, and being able to tap into a lot of relationships because of the upped influence. So that's why in today's episode, we are going to focus on how to do just that. Skyrocket your online influence. And who better to do that than today's guest, who is a serial entrepreneur who builds the companies he needs most in the world. So in 2014, he launched Up My Influence to help entrepreneurs like himself attract the perfect audiences and grow their brands without the crazy costs and contracts associated with traditional PR companies. He is a frequent speaker at podcasting and social media conferences, including Social Media Marketing World. And in addition to that, he is a weekly consumer expert on Fox 35 Orlando and News 13. He writes a syndicated column for 9 newspapers and has appeared in the media over 2,000 times. Today's guest for episode 207 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Josh Elledge. Josh, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Mark. I'm really grateful to be here.
Josh, I'm really happy to have you on the show as well, and I look forward to just diving into how we can grow our influences. But before we get into that, I talked a little bit about this in the intro about why you got started with Up My Influence. I'm wondering if you could fill in some of the holes in that and just talk a little bit about that initial journey and the early days of Up My Influence.
Yeah, well, it actually starts with my other company, Savings Angel, which I launched over 11 years ago. And I was actually in the process of losing a contract that I had doing some internet marketing with another company. And I really came across this idea of how to cut my own grocery bill in half. And I thought, gosh, I wish everybody could have access to this information and this service the way that I've developed it. And I thought it was a really good business opportunity or to be able to share this with people. And so I called it Savings Angel and developed a membership-based website. But that's not enough. It's not enough to just develop something really, really great and have the best product in the world. You need exposure, and exposure is everything in business. And if you don't have exposure, then you're not going to get customers. And quite frankly, we all need customers to survive, let alone thrive. And so at the time, see, this was, again, over 11 years ago, I didn't have any money for advertising. I knew advertising would be pretty important. So instead, I just started reaching out to everybody I knew that had an audience. And so I reached out to local radio stations, local newspapers, TV stations, any bloggers I could think of at the time. And, not all of them said yes, but enough of them did. And in fact, one of my first big successes was a local radio station, and they actually had me on the air. Now, you have to understand that at the time, Mark, I was broke. I was in jeopardy of losing my third house. I couldn't pay my utility bills. And it just, having gone through the experience previously, I just hated being there. And so I absolutely had to make this work. And so even though I wasn't necessarily very good on the radio my first time, I appeared anyway. And I was able to generate enough money to pay my heating bill, and actually had created over $1,200 in revenue just thanks to that 3-minute segment. So I was kind of sold on the concept of serving audiences. And so I just kept on doing it more and more and more. Eventually started writing a newspaper column, eventually started doing radio with some big radio stations, and then eventually some syndicated radio programs. My newspaper that I'd been writing, and I've been writing a newspaper column now for about 9 years. It's a syndicated newspaper column, reaches 1.1 million readers every week. So it's, that's all the advertising we need to do. I do lots of TV as well. I do syndicated TV. I've done, major market stuff, a lot of TV in Chicago, and now here in Orlando, Florida, where I live with my family. I've been on air between 3 different TV stations, well over 600 times. So yeah, all told, over 2,000 times in the media, and we've been able to generate over $6 million in revenue for Savings Angel. So that was a really good template. I thought, my gosh, I wish other people could learn about this. And so I just started helping out pro bono in our local market or local startup scene here in Orlando. And people really liked the message, and it worked, quite frankly.
And you mentioned a bunch of different ways that you were able to grow your influence, the syndicated newspaper, being on radio, the TV opportunities. There's just so many ways to grow your influence. And that doesn't even include things in the online world like blogging, podcasting, creating training courses, videos, YouTube channel, things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's so many ways to grow our influence. I feel like a lot of people get overwhelmed. They want to dip their hands in everything, and it doesn't necessarily lead to a good result because you're trying to do so many things. So how can we pick the best way for us to gain influence, stick with that, and really ride that one home?
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is a very, very common question that we get. And so we help a lot of people at a service now called upmyinfluence.com. And this, what you just illustrated, very, very common. And by the way, the rules that I share, even though I kind of shared some kind of more traditional sounding media, what I'm going to teach you and what I'm going to share, in this conversation, the rules apply no matter what the audience is. So long as you're talking about working with influencers, and those influencers could either be in the media or they're social media superstars or they're big time bloggers, the rules all apply. But in terms of choosing that audience, what I recommend is that you try to shoot for audiences that are ultimately going to pay you money. And so as much as you'd like to work with, say, building an audience, and again, I would say this is kind of in the early days, because one of the biggest objectives we have if you're a brand new business owner, if you're kind of newer, you're kind of early stage, is that we need to get you more revenue. Because when you have more revenue, then you don't have to worry about cash flow as much, and you can make smart investments in scaling. And, if you're a solopreneur, again, one of the goals that we want to hit is you need help. You can't do this all on your own. Being a solopreneur and being the only one who does everything, it's a lot of work, and you just can't scale that effectively if you're responsible for doing everything. So a business owner has one job, and that's to grow the company. And if you're spending all your time with operations and working with clients and customers and, designing your social media, that's keeping you away from the things that are going to help you really build and scale. So, again, getting back to your original question, is we need to identify where your paying customers are and where they pre-congregate. Now, a lot of times you're just going to have to do some guessing at this, but I think you can narrow this down by just using a little bit of intelligence. You want to shoot for an audience that has both the desire to pay you and also has the ability to pay you. So, you might really enjoy working with younger millennials, but, if they don't want to pay you money, then you might consider working with a different audience first. You can build that audience of raving fans of, people who like you but are never going to give you money. That's fine. They can work as your evangelizers. But in the early days, I want to help you get to, $10,000 a month or on up.
And you mentioned something very important about like a lot of people are solopreneurs. First off, I do recommend you have a team or hire any assistant, even if it's part-time, because it helps you with a lot of work. But for the solopreneur and for a lot of people in general, they find that they have to strike a balance between putting in the work that they need to continue to put to keep their influence and putting in the work that will help them grow their influence. So blogging, for example, you have the dynamic where you have to continue to write the blog posts, but you also have to do the marketing. You have to reach out to people who can help you spread the word. You have to optimize for SEO, share on social media. So how can we balance putting in the work like content creation that makes the influence possible while doing some of the things that specifically help us with building our influence?
Again, at the beginning, you're just going to have to hustle, right? You have to do everything. But the sooner you can take any profits that you get in the business and you hire somebody to help with maybe designing social media images, you really should focus on filling out the stuff that, let's say, you can get done for, if you hire overseas, $8 an hour, and that would be maybe some simple social media scheduling and some social media image design. I mean, that's now something that you don't have to do. And this is really critical because, again, if, with Up My Influence now, we've got a team of well over 20 people. So as a result, like my impact in the world is huge compared to it's close to 20 times what it would be if it were just me. And that's kind of the goal. And so maybe you put on a calendar that you've got 90 days to get to a point where you can hire your first assistant, so that you can not have to do some of the cheap manual labor that you can have somebody else do. It's maybe scheduling your posts. Maybe if, in the world of content marketing, you're having somebody research ideas for you. And, so they go on some basic SEO tools and find out some topics that you could possibly rank for. And so you give them that assignment. And again, these are all things that you can hire for. If you find the right person on Upwork or Fiverr, you can really get this work done very inexpensively. And it's smart activity to do that. So if you've already got a day job and you're very part-time in your business, if you can, take some of your day job money and just invest it, and find a good assistant, someone that can do a little bit of work. And now you don't have to spend your time on that, and you can focus your time on attracting customers. And again, customers are going to be what's going to allow you to scale. It's going to allow you to generate those profits and help you to be able to, have a bigger impact in the world, which is what I think we all want to do.
And like having that idea of the type of impact you want to create also, and keeping that at the forefront of your mind can fuel you towards hustling and taking more action. But it's also like taking the right action, being smart with the action you take. But even on a deeper level, there are some people who can really help you move a lot more forward than if you were just doing it on your own. And one of the common themes I see amongst influencers is that they're building healthy relationships. I mean, I've done over 200 episodes on Breakthrough Success. I've been able to build a lot of incredible relationships, interview a lot of awesome people like Josh. And with that in mind, I'm wondering how exactly can we build healthy relationships even if we aren't influencers yet?
Right. And you talking about relationships with your audience or relationships with influencers?
I'd like to talk about a little more of the focus on building relationships with influencers, but if we could also talk about the audience, because the audience is also very important for your success as well.
Well, you're going to like this because I'm a big fan of Twitter. And so here's the deal. And I love talking about this subject, about how to connect with influencers, because here's what we're after. The goal here is, and anybody who's listening to this conversation, one of your main objectives should be to increase your authority. Because when you have high authority, then people treat you with more respect. And when people treat you with more respect, you can get what you want. So if you send an email, if let's say you receive an email from somebody and you don't otherwise know who this is, so you're gonna say, okay, well, the offer is otherwise fine, but I just don't know who this is. What would you do if I said, well, I'm going to give you 1 minute to decide whether or not to engage with this person? What would you do? Well, you're probably going to make some judgments based on, we're already doing this, by the way. You're going to make some judgments about, based on the writing, did they write well? What does their email signature look like? Obviously, they're going to put a link to their website in their email signature. So you're going to click and when that web page comes up, you're instantly going to judge that person. And so, most of us make judgments about people really, really quickly, and then we just look for confirmation of that initial judgment. So, in this case, we'd look at their webpage and we'd say, well, does it look professional? Does it look like they've got some engagement? And really, we're looking for two things. Where does authority come from? Well, a lot of people will say, well, authority comes from when you're making money. No, I don't know that's a correlation, but I don't think it's a causation. You can make a lot of money, living in some obscure part of the planet, and you've got some e-com business and you're just kind of hiding out in a cubicle somewhere. And I don't know that necessarily gives you authority. You don't actually gain the authority until you go out and you start, teaching people and getting on stages and associating with other people. And you start building an audience of people who who follow you and they want to learn from you. That's where authority comes from. And very specifically, Marc, authority comes from two places. And so when we work with a client, this is what we focus on. We focus on their indicators of authority, and those indicators of authority are based in two things. Number one, social proof. Does it look like you have an audience? And Marc, as of when we're recording this, you've got over 430,000 followers on Twitter. That's a lot of authority. When people see that, they're going to think, wow, clearly there's a lot of people who pay attention to what Marc has to say. So if I don't want to get left behind, I need to make sure that I as well am listening to what Marc has to say. Marc is verified on Twitter as well. So again, that's going to communicate to people that they're missing out. We all like to do what we feel like other people are doing. And, again, the person listening to this, if you're not following Marc on Twitter, clearly you're getting left behind. I'm following Marc on Twitter. Okay. And so that actually leads me to number two. Number one is social proof. Number two is association. So if I say, well, look, I'm someone who's done well over $7 million in revenue, and I've got I've been in the media over 2,000 times. I'm not hardcore influencer, but I do all right. But I follow Marc, on Twitter. Now all of a sudden you have number two, and number two is association. And so whose stages are you speaking on? Who are you working with that says, yeah, Marc is a really good guy and you need to pay attention to what he's talking about? It's those associations are going to communicate to us, they're going to indicate to us that other tastemakers say you got to pay attention to Marc. Marc writes a number of books. They're really good. You need to learn from this guy. And, that's really often all it takes. And then, once you have those two things, you're in a pretty good position. You can go out, Marc, and I know you have some pretty phenomenal guests on your podcast. And how are you able to get such good guests? It's because you've got that authority that kind of blazes the trail for you.
Josh, thank you for sharing with us that breakdown. And I like the idea of social proof and authority by association. And that's something where the podcast has helped me out a lot with that. Social media has been a big difference as well. But for me, Twitter is my top social network, but for other people, it could be something else. It just comes down to focusing most of your time on one social network and also devoting your time towards the others. But with a lot of your time that you spend on social media, focused on growing on one social network.
Yeah. And don't worry, I think you're going to, don't worry about the shiny object thing. Just pick one, I'm really in the B2B world, LinkedIn and Twitter are really, really big for me. We generate a lot of business through those two social media platforms. And a lot of other people are focused on Facebook. I think Instagram is also really great for kind of communicating behind the scenes. And right now, Instagram is really good engagement. So I'm a fan of Instagram as well.
And I'm happy you mentioned LinkedIn. LinkedIn is definitely the dark horse of social media. And
Sheesh.
I'm wondering if you could briefly go into how you use LinkedIn to grow your audience.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right now. I'd say that's where we get about 90% of our new clients. So LinkedIn, if you know what you're doing, look, on all of these things, on all social media, the most important thing you can do is have a full and complete profile, and it ought to be dazzling. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Josh Elledge, ELL, and then Edge, EDGE, and just take some clues from what I'm doing and copy some of the things that I'm doing, because it works. And we generate dozens, and I mean dozens of conversations, and not just leads, but where they actually start going through our sales funnel out of LinkedIn. And I compare that to what I'd have to pay for that, on Facebook. And when I say dozens, it's like many, many dozens. It's generally, 100 or more good leads every single week on LinkedIn, because I have a really good profile. We do a lot of reaching out using LinkedIn Premium. And then we just take them through a process where we, communicate with them, my team and I, through a series of messages. And then eventually, when we feel like we've worked on the relationship, we make an invitation that is not, hey, buy my thing. It's really like, let's talk about maybe the next way I could bring some more value to you, and let's see where it goes from there. And yeah, so I'm just here's your TLDR. You cannot over invest in your LinkedIn profile in 2018 and beyond. It's that important. Not only is it important for lead gen, but from an authority standpoint, and again, if I'm being your PR person for a second, and you say, well, Josh, I want to connect with influencers, and I want to connect with audiences and media. And here's the deal. When you reach out to the media, they're going to do a Google search on you. I'm going to, when I do that, I'm like, well, who's Marc Guberti? And so I'll tell you right now, you can Google Marc and you're going to find really good stuff. It's because Marc has been very diligent in promoting his brand. He's served audiences. And so similarly, you can Google me and you can see, on that first page of results, you're going to see my LinkedIn profile. And that's really common for most people, is when you Google their name, that LinkedIn, the LinkedIn profile is going to come up right away. And so let's see here. Yep, look at that. So on your first page, Marc, of your Google search results, by the way, your profile is very, very well optimized for Google. You've got Medium and a bunch of other stuff, but LinkedIn's here. Looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Google result number 7. So basically, Google is going to give you this. LinkedIn gives you nearly 100% control of your LinkedIn profile. So you may as well use it to really showcase the value that you can bring other people. So obviously, you want to have a great profile image. You want to optimize your bio. You want to optimize, kind of the little about me sentence that you get. And Marc, yours is really, really great. You definitely want to use your cover image. Don't use the default little circles and lines that LinkedIn gives you for the cover image. You may as well use that billboard to advertise or promote whatever you offer. For me, I use it to promote my my webinar. And because I know that when people join when people sit in on my webinar, I have the opportunity to really have a huge impact on hearts and minds and really cause a lot of people to take massive action, which is good. I mean, that's ultimately what I want them to do.
Josh, thanks for sharing with us those great pointers on LinkedIn. The Google ranking that really high, it's something that they tend to do with a lot of social networks. So people search you, your LinkedIn profile will most likely appear on page one. And you touched upon how you use LinkedIn Premium to find potential clients. I'm wondering if you could go into that a little more about how you use LinkedIn Premium versus regular LinkedIn to find potential clients, and what a typical relationship building process would look like.
Yeah, and now I'll tell you that this is actually, my team does more of this. I kind of know the basic general tips. So in terms of strategy for searching for contacts, I'm not the expert on that. I rely on other really, really talented people. But I can speak generally with LinkedIn Premium. It gives you a lot of control over connection requests and searching and setting very particular keywords that you want to search for people that might be in your ideal audience. And then it gives, LinkedIn gives you the opportunity to connect with a lot of people. And then when you make that, when they accept your connection requests, then you have the ability to communicate with them. And so we heavily utilize direct messages, and we don't do it in a way that's spammy. You got to be as authentic and personal as possible, and really make it all about them. So, kind of getting back to some old school Dale Carnegie stuff, people really care about themselves. And so your job should be to be, what can I give someone, or what can I provide somebody something? What can I provide them that is going to make them go, yeah, I would love that. Thank you so much. And so that's kind of what we try to shoot for. So, in our case, maybe we offer to provide them some free publicity. I've got a decent social media audience between my savings angel and up my influence, well over 100,000 followers. So that might be something. I'd say, hey, so in your case, Mark, what you might want to do is say, hey, I've got over 400,000 followers. Love to, what are you working on right now? Maybe there's something that I could promote to my audience. And in their mind, in your mind, what does it cost you? And it's really not a whole lot, but to their mind, they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to promote me to over 400,000 followers on Twitter. And so, you could really for your, Mark, I know you do some really good, you do consulting. And I'm sure that's extremely valuable, but that might be a great way to begin that conversation with some potential consulting clients, where you start off by saying, what are you working on? And then you say, as a consultant, I could probably help them a lot. So then you offer to, maybe do a couple tweets for them, and they're like, oh my gosh, thank you. That was so cool. It's just like, hey, maybe we should jump on the phone real quick for 15 minutes and figure out if it makes sense, if there's something that we could do together. And then that's when you would introduce, the work that you do as a professional consultant, and you kind of go from there.
And it's thank you for giving us that breakdown of using LinkedIn Premium, but also how the conversation would take place, a focus on the person you're talking to instead of what you do instead of you. The more times you say I, the more likely you have to just go through and change some of that. That's one of the things that I've learned. The more times I say I, the more times I realize that's not me, or that's not. Yeah. So if you see yourself using the word I a lot in your writing, just change that. I use personal examples a lot, so sometimes I do use I a lot, but I do make a point to go back and make those changes when I have to.
Yeah, and LinkedIn, by the way, let's talk about, so just a little bit more information about what you give them. So I connect with a lot of people on LinkedIn, and they're constantly saying, hey, download my free ebook. So I have more ebooks than I know what to do with, right? And so that's not going to be a very valuable lead magnet in that sense, for lead magnets in the sense of, on your website, those probably still work pretty well. But if you offer an act of service, that has way more weight than download my free thing that, I produced a couple of years ago, and it's something else that you're going to have to read. So because you're giving it away for free, it doesn't really have the value that maybe a book would. In your case, Mark, you might be able to get away with, hey, I'm selling this book right now on Amazon. I see, Mark has a ton of books on Amazon. So You might be able to get away with that. Although here's the reality. Every time you give away an ebook, the average person will download it and they'll never look at it. They might look at the first page. It's just, we're busy. Like, everyone's busy. And so we're constantly starved for attention. Podcasts are a really great way, by the way, for today's attention. We're just like so overwhelmed with information coming at us from every direction. Anytime you could do multimedia, Marc, I know you're very active on YouTube as well. Smart, really, really smart. You're in the right place.
And like you're mentioning, like a lot of different ways to create content. It's good to create a lot of content, provide a lot of value, and just during all this content creation, trying to grow a brand and become more influential, there are just going to be a lot of challenges that we have to face. And with that in mind, Josh, I'm wondering if you could share with us one big challenge that you faced in your journey and a powerful lesson you learned during that challenge.
Right. So when, one of my previous businesses that ultimately ended up not succeeding was I owned a small town newspaper, and it was a blog before they even called them blogs. But the newspaper was not a subscription newspaper. I sent it mailed it or distributed it to everybody. And, that business could have succeeded and, migrated into something else. However, I got in my own way, and that was because I was so afraid of selling that I just didn't do it. And, when you're a newspaper, that's a problem because you rely on working with small businesses and other businesses and selling advertising space. And that's how you pay the bills. And I was so afraid to sell because I felt like selling was convincing people about something that they wouldn't normally do. And so because of that, I, ultimately ended up in bankruptcy with that business because it just, I wouldn't do that. So my very next business was marketing and sales for another company. And so basically I would be doing sales and marketing 12 hours a day for 5 years. And it was really good. And so because of that, it really expanded my comfort zone. And I really learned that selling was not about convincing at all. It's really about how can I bring value to this person? And maybe there's a fit, maybe there's not. And if there's not a fit, that's fine. I don't need to talk this person into anything. It's just looking for the right people and seeing, here's all the different ways that I can bring you value. What do you think? And you try to find out the core of really what they want in life. And if you can help them, great. Let's get together. So it's more, amateurs convince and leaders sort. And that's one thing I learned when I did sales and marketing for 5 years, was just to relax, and just, find ways that you can bring value to people. And I'll tell you that it's a much better way of doing business. When you wake up and your feet hit the floor and you say, you get out of bed and you're like, and your first question is, oh my gosh, who am I going to sell to today? Because I need to make money. That's a tough way to do business. It's stressful. It's just kind of sucks. However, if you say, your feet hit the floor and you go, who do I get to serve today? And what value can I bring the world? And what impact can I make in the world? And that's your leading question. I'm telling you right now, life is easier as a business owner. And I'm not just telling you that because it sounds good on a plaque or something like that. I'm telling you because it legit works. I mean, please listen to, me as someone who's had, been able to fail, and then ultimately succeed. I succeeded because I changed my mindset on that. And it's not about, how much money can you extract from people? It's about how much impact and change can you make in the world, and how much good can you bring your clients? And certainly you always want to bring far more value to your clients than the money they pay you, because if you get in that position, then you're set for life. So that should be the goal for all business owners.
And I really like that idea of setting up a leading question that frames your mindset for today, and how can I basically provide more value instead of how can I find the next customer who is going to pay me. So that is a really good question that we should be asking ourselves more often. I'm happy you came up with it, like in context of the challenge as well, because like the way we wake up, the things we're saying to ourselves at the beginning of the day really affect how the rest of our day goes. And another thing that affects the mindset is what we're feeding ourselves, what knowledge we're giving ourselves. And with that in mind, Josh, I know you mentioned Dale Carnegie earlier, but I wonder if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
Golly. So I would say, obviously, if you have not read Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich like 4 or 5 times, you need to go back and reread it. And I want you to read it and really pay attention to the promise that he offers at the very beginning. And that promise is that there's going to be a certain level that people are going to get, in terms of value. And then there's going to be a whole different level. And when you discover it and when you realize it, your life will never be the same. And I'd really like for you to explore what that possibly may be. And I've got some theories on what that is, but when you reread that book several times, you get completely different messages from it, just based on where you are in life and what you are open to, because he drops some major bombs in that book. And then I would also probably need to put Atlas Shrugged in that book as well. It's a big one. I mean, it's about 1,100 pages long, and it's a fiction novel. But the thing that I really gained from this book, and I would say that this book really has impacted my life, unlike any other book on the planet, just simply because it's really good from a philosophy of, Am I going to blame other people for my problems? Am I going to rely on other people to bail me out? Am I going to rely on other people to make me successful? Or am I going to accept and own responsibility for everything that happens in my life? And that is the big message that that's kind of like my big takeaway. And because it's such a big book, you really get to internalize that philosophy much better. I know today it's maybe not as popular because we want, some people want the government to do everything for them. They want government to take a bigger role in their lives. You'll find that Ayn Rand, the author, is not necessarily a big fan of that, of that concept. But take the ride anyway. It's going to probably take you a month to read the book, but by the time you get to the end of it, you're probably going to be like me, where you're just going to be like, you know what? I'm going to roll up my shirts, my shirt sleeves, and I'm going to do whatever it takes in order to make my mark in the world and to have that impact in the world. So it's quite a journey. And then I would say number 3, if I were to pick something maybe a little bit more modern, I'm a big fan of 5 a.m. Miracle. Not because I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, I don't, but I try to begin every morning with intention. And I think that's far more important. But absolutely read that book by Hal Elrod, the 5 a.m. Miracle Morning. Excuse me. But yeah, read that. I think there's a podcast. It's very similar. But the Miracle Morning, read that book. And it will absolutely have a huge, huge impact on your life. Again, if you begin each day with intention, it just sets the tone for the day.
Josh, thank you for sharing those great book recommendations. Those will all be in the show notes for this episode, markguberti.com/E207. If you guys want a free book that will help you create, promote, and optimize your content for growth and revenue, you can grab my book free, Content Marketing Secrets, over at markguberti.com/book. And if you guys want to keep in touch with Josh and learn more about what he's doing at Up My Influence, he actually has a free webinar that he's offering, 3 secrets to skyrocket your online influence. That link will be in the show notes as well. But Josh, I can't thank you enough for sharing all of your great insights with us. It was such a pleasure to have you on Breakthrough Success.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you.
How does over 100 retweets per day sound to you? My free ebook, 27 Ways to Get More Retweets on Twitter, has you covered. I use the methods within this ebook to get over 10,000 retweets every single quarter. To learn